Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and to some race reaction to the 2022 Japanese Grand Prix. I'm on my own today, so you've just got me. I'm so sorry in advance. Looking at chat are all leaving immediately. So I will be coming to you guys throughout. What a bizarre morning. What a really, really bizarre morning. Such a mix of emotions. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know. Anger, frustration, confusion, excitement. Really, really bizarre. What are you rating the race? We'll do that right at the start for you guys in chat. What are you rating the race out of 10? I mean, I think what we got, 5? Is that harsh? I think we had a good start, quite exciting with that battle into turn 1 and then some action early on in the second restart. 5, maybe 6, if I'm being generous. I don't know. It's a tough one because it wasn't. I didn't not enjoy the race, if that makes sense. It just wasn't action-packed, as crazy as that might sound. But we'll get onto that. It's not going to take long to get through the order, so I will start with that one. We'll fly through that, hopefully Ted's notebook style. Then we'll talk about, well, the FIA will need to be discussed. I think that's pretty clear. Definitely need a conversation about the FIA, and we'll be talking a lot as well about post-race, all the confusion there. So much to get through. Starting, though, with the news, in case you kind of missed it, really. Bit of confusion at the end of the race. Max Verstappen is the 2022 Formula One World Champion. That is confirmed 100%. Full points were awarded at the end of that Grand Prix, even though we didn't reach 75% race distance. I got confused. I said that on Twitter. I'm sure some of you have been confused as well. But because the race resumed and wasn't stopped completely, then we can have full points. And then the old 75-point rule, which I got confused with as well, is that unless the race, that's if the race is stopped effectively. So a red flag at 70% race distance, it's half points. Otherwise, it's full points. So effectively, we could have had a one-lap shootout in Japan and it still would have been full points. So I don't know how people feel about that, but Max is the world champion. Quite a funny moment in Parc Fermé. In the cooldown room, where it's told to go into the world champions room, and he was like, I'm not world champion yet. So even Max didn't think he was champion. Very confusing, but it's another big win for FIA communications. So we're going to start with Max Verstappen. We've got to, really. Like I say, he is the world champion, and therefore, of course, he won the race. 27 seconds clear in just 28 laps is what we ended up with. 28. I didn't turn my mic down. Sorry, I'll get back to that in a second. Mario, I didn't turn my mic down, mate. I'm at the normal levels. Do you want me to shout? I can shout if you like, mate. It's not a problem. But yeah, 27 seconds in 28 laps is pretty damn phenomenal. Whatever you think about the conditions, that was incredible. Yes, Charles Leclerc was struggling with his tyres, but that's insane pace. Absolutely insane pace. Comfortable victory in the end. Nobody was getting near him, really. There was a moment where they started to pull away together early on. At the second restart, I thought maybe, or the restart, it wasn't another restart, was there? But at the restart, I thought maybe they were going to disappear together and we'd have a close race and maybe a bit of drama, but Max just started pulling away in the end, and that was kind of that, really, wasn't it? He was never, ever phased. We will say, though, at the original start, which was quite a while ago, 6 o'clock UK time, so what? That's maths, 4.5 hours ago now. But pretty sketchy stuff, or close stuff into turn 1. Not sketchy, that's not fair. Very, very close. And there's a shot that you might see in the stream at some point. I think I put it in. That just reminds me a little bit of Senna, Prost, turn 1 at Suzuka. I wasn't expecting contact, but it was that kind of close, and it's a great shot. Charles Leclerc very nearly taking the lead completely from Verstappen. Did lead briefly, but Max hung it around the outside absolutely brilliantly and managed to keep that lead and go on and win the race. So that was a lot of fun. I quite enjoyed that battle. I thought we could really have done with Leclerc at that stage taking the lead so that we had an exciting restart, as it turned out, but no chance he was going to get touched. Like I said, poor getaway initially, side by side with Leclerc outside of turn 1-2 to take the lead. Pitted on lap 2 of the restart to put the inters on. Was discussing possibly pitting a little bit later on, but didn't feel like the gap was quite big enough. You don't want a sticky wheel, for example, ruining that for you, or a slow pit stop, full stop. So, yeah, didn't in the end decide to go for that. But he thought he needed to for the championship, but the championship was done. So, there you go. Max Verstappen, race winner and world champion. I think that makes him, if my quick maths before the stream is correct, and by maths I mean counting, which isn't always great, he becomes the 11th driver to win back-to-back titles now. So that's quite a prestigious club, really, isn't it? When you think of the drivers that are in there, and your Fangios. Was it Ascari that did it first and then Fangio? Obviously your Lewis Hamiltons, your Michael Schumachers, Mika Hakkinen, quite an exclusive club, Senna and Prost as well. So pretty big deal for him, pretty big deal. So great result for Max Verstappen today. Sergio Perez was P2, cannot win the championship, obviously, because Max Verstappen's champion. Don't know why I needed to clarify that one. Did finish third on the road. But Charles Leclerc was given a late penalty, 5 seconds. I'll cover Leclerc as well. Let's do it. Why not? There's the shot I was talking about. So it's a 5-second penalty. So he's coming up to the final corner. They've come through 130R. Leclerc's got it wrong at the final chicane and gone straight across and rejoined in front of Sergio Perez. The stewards gave Leclerc the penalty for... Did I open it? I did indeed. Leaving the track and gaining an advantage. Now, I'll read you their explanation and then I'll give you my thoughts, even though it's probably going to contradict what they say. So, 5-second penalty and 1 penalty point. So, the stewards reviewed the video evidence, obviously, say that although Charles Leclerc did not gain a position by going off track, it was still deemed to have gained a lasting advantage. This determination takes into account the numerous driver briefings where the race directors advised that an advantage will be considered as having been gained if you go off track and return in the same position whilst defending. There have been a number of precedents this year, in particular, Zhou in Saudi Arabia and Alonso in Miami. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not, by the way, I don't want this to be taken away from Max Verstappen. He deserves the world championship. I'm not saying it doesn't matter if it goes to Austin. This isn't about the championship, it's about this precedent and consistency. Was Sergio Perez really attacking Charles Leclerc? Was Charles Leclerc defending from Perez? Because defending to me would be if a driver is sending a move. I don't think Perez was that close. From the replays I've seen, he wasn't about to sling it up the inside or anything. Maybe because Leclerc carried a bit more speed in and missed the chicane, perhaps that's why. But I don't feel like that was Leclerc defending a position. I would say that a penalty would be more warranted for his defence on Checo when he came back on the track. That's what I thought the penalty was initially for. I thought that would be... the squeeze to the outside of that final corner in those conditions. I would call that a 5-second penalty. It's not the first lap of a race. There's not much in that. He has left the track. He's come back on potentially, you could argue, dangerously and squeezed in wide. I would say that's more a penalty than the incident at the chicane itself, which it's not. I'm not saying the penalty's not warranted. It's warranted for one thing or the other. I'm just not convinced Perez... it was really defending, if that makes sense. So maybe just me. I don't know what you guys say. The aroused brick too, which means that's a sequel. Says deserved penalty. Fair enough. He gained an advantage. I feel like he didn't. I think when you look at it, he comes back on track with the same gap, more or less, to Perez. So I don't know. Maybe he was setting up a move. It's just a glimpse. Either way, penalty deserved for whichever one you want to give it to. I just thought it was for the latter one. I'm just not convinced Checo was going to send that. He didn't really need to. He wasn't going to win the championship, was he? So, and of course, if Leclerc had been second, that wouldn't have been the title for Verstappen today, and we'd have had to wait till Austin for Leclerc's fight back, which was never going to come. So, yeah, it was just a thought. I just didn't really feel like that was but if they're side by side going in there, or Checo's got a wheel alongside Charles' right rear, it would be, wouldn't it? Then I'd absolutely, yeah, that's gaining an advantage. But I don't feel like that was that. But it doesn't matter, does it? At the end of the day, for me, he deserves a penalty for the second bit anyway. So I would have given him the 5 seconds either way. But yeah, Sergio Perez, great little fight actually with Leclerc for a few laps. Some good defending from Leclerc. The hairpin was quite tense at times. Checo getting very, very close to squeezing down the inside there on the exit. Not quite got the traction of the Ferrari at that point. It was another close moment, wasn't there, as well? So it was good, a nice little battle between them, but really, that's the battle for second in the championship now, isn't it? And I think that's put Checo ahead. It will have done. So only 2 points between us. So yeah, Perez now a point clear of Leclerc. So that is your next battle to keep an eye on for the rest of the season. So an important moment between the two of them, if they're really bothered about being runner-up in the championship. I don't know. But yeah, I'll read you the notes just to make sure I get everything covered that I wrote down. He did jump Sainz at the start, although he would have jumped him anyway a little bit later in the lap, of course. Pitted on lap 2 of the restart for the Inters. Nice double stack from Red Bull, although it wasn't... It's still a double stack, but it wasn't close, was it? There was quite a gap between them in the end. So, caught Leclerc, 7 minutes to go, approximately. Close to getting through. at the hairpin, but just couldn't do it on the last lap. So that was quite dramatic. And then Charles Leclerc, better start versus Verstappen, as I say, on the inside of turn 1. Nice little fight down there. Slightly ahead, I would argue. I think he was. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think he was just slightly ahead. It was a good fight. I enjoyed that. More of that at the start, please. Good defense against Perez. Did go off track at the chicane, as I say. 5-second penalty in the end. I feel, again, just for anybody just tuning in, I think for the squeeze out wide would be what I'd have given that penalty for rather than anything else. But not really much on Leclerc or Perez after that, because that's kind of what their race was, wasn't it? The start was interesting for both of them. Then they had a 2.5-hour break like everybody else, and then that was sort of it. Nothing really happened until Perez caught Leclerc. So, yeah. Not. By the way, you'll get a lot of today because it's me on my own, so I have to correct myself and think. But yeah, I'm not got much more to add on that one. Carlos Sainz, pretty hefty shunt on that first lap, aquaplaning, and it's a run to turn 12, isn't it, or through turn 12. Lost control of the car, pretty hefty smash, hit the barrier quite hard, kind of pinged back into the track a little bit. Lewis Hamilton on the replays, not that far away from collecting him either. I mean, that was scary stuff at the start of that Grand Prix, and there was other incidents as well, which we'll get to a little bit later. But that was it for Sainz. I've got nothing else to add on Carlos Sainz. Don't worry, I will come to the tractor. We will absolutely get to that. We'll do that a little bit later. But yeah, I think Sainz, weekend to forget. In the end, I mean, pretty good in qualifying, to be fair. We can say that about Carlos Sainz, taking P3 within half a tenth of pole position, or somewhere around half a tenth off pole position. So not a bad weekend, I suppose, is the answer to that for Sainz, but a bad Sunday, which no criticism for him in that situation. All that water on the track, the intermediate tyres, the start of a race, a river across the track. It's just always going to end in disaster for somebody. It just happened to be Carlos Sainz today. I'll read some of your comments in chat as well in just a moment for Red Bull and Ferrari, but really, aside from the Perez-Leclerc battle and Sainz's crash, the big story is Max Verstappen, world champion. Anybody surprised? Anybody? Not so much that he won the title, but he did it this weekend. A few people in my comment sections of the preview said they didn't think he'd do it this weekend, that it was too much of an ask. Even though he's got such a good car, they thought Leclerc would take sort of P2 and maybe get fastest lap as well. So anybody surprised that he's done it this weekend? I'm not. I predicted it, and on predictions, by the way, bang on pole position, bang on the top 3, and that he'd win the championship, and that Alpine would be best of the rest. Just saying. Anyway, it's nice to get something right. It's not very often. See what you said. I'll scroll through this chat then, because this is what we'll have to do today. We'll talk. Don't worry, we're going to talk about Latifi. Don't worry, we'll get to him. He deserves quite a bit of hype. I'll go to the incident then, where it's just anything else you want to add. So, Shaw pushed him off when he re-entered, says Miguel. That's what I'm saying, Miguel. That's the bit I think is more the penalty than the incident, the chicane itself. Vettel 2019 vibes. Everybody hated it, said Findlay. Purple Zebra says, I think the penalty is fine, but how did they make the decision so quickly, but not last week? Also, the end of the race at Silverstone this year was fine, apparently. I was going to come to that later, actually, but seeing as you've brought it up, Purple Zebra, I think it's fascinating to me that it took so long in Singapore. What was it? An hour and a half, something like that, or a little bit longer? I can't remember now. Somebody like said 110 minutes the other day, unless that was something else. But it was quite a while to give Perez his penalty and a reprimand, but they decided on the Charles Leclerc one straight away without talking to the drivers. I think in some ways it would have been better for the FIA to talk to the drivers on this one than it would have been for what was a clear breach of the regulations for Perez in Singapore, if that makes sense. So it's quite weird that it took so long. I suspect, perhaps being a little bit cynical, that because it would have decided the World Championship, they wanted to make the decision early before TV crews went off air, so they could make sure that everyone knew Max Verstappen was world champion, because that's the world we work in Formula One at the moment, it seems, isn't it? Let's make sure the TV get what they need, rather than dedicated channels having to stay on air for longer than they need to. What a shocking thing that would be. No, Latifi can't still win the championship. Could you imagine that one? Richard says nailed on penalty. Andre says he gained an advantage. Of course he was close. Yeah, he was close, Angry Birds. I'm not arguing that he was close. Nobody's arguing that. I'm saying that he wasn't up the inside, or he wasn't making the move. I wouldn't call it a defence, but yeah, as others have pointed out, Vettel, Canada, unsafe rejoin. I'd have given it. What I'm saying then, I'll put it this way, very simply. What I'm saying is I would have given a penalty for an unsafe rejoin rather than defensive because I don't think he was defending, but there you go. Charles got the corner on the final lap, says Patrick. He did indeed. Angry Bird says they were side by side. They were not side by side in that final chicane, unless we watch different races. I don't know. It could. I mean, look, Checo might have sent it. As I said earlier, he may have sent it, and if Charles carrying more speed into that chicane because he's going to miss it, then fair enough. But I don't. That's not side by side that close. We'll do super chats in just a moment. A says, I'm very tired. I'm not. I'm really alert this morning, which is quite concerning. And we'll take a couple more comments before we move on. FIA should make the rules more clear. No more after the race. I'd like to see decisions in race. I said that last week, didn't I? Did you see the size of the World Championship chair they've been carrying around, Sean? You knew they were doing whatever it took, so they didn't have to cast it. Didn't want to pay the fees to get it to the USA. Is that what you're saying, Warren? I like that one. No, I didn't see it. I was too busy trying to work out what was going on Twitter and getting things wrong, basically. Surprised, yes. Lucky, yes. Confused, yes, says Nathan. Oh, Nathan's summing up for everybody there. Meanwhile, surprised at the World Championship. I think that might be sarcasm. And I'm surprised he won it this weekend, even after the flag, says Nebula. Thank you very much. Let's do super chats quickly, then we will roll on. Because there's loads to talk about later. That's probably why most of you are here now rather than the race itself, because there wasn't much. Thank you to Johnny White for your super chat. Says 2 down, 6 to go for Super Max. I mean, what I can't remember how old he is. He's like 8. He's still so young, isn't he? So there's still plenty of time for him to win lots of championships, especially if this Red Bull continues to dominate. This could be his era. Rick says, thank you very much. Says, just Sean. Oh no, sarcasm, not terrible race. Far from great. And congrats to Honda and Max Red Bull. Driver of the day, Ocon, Vettel. Thank you very much, mate. Yeah, it's okay. There'll be lots of sarcasm here, so I don't mind the sarcasm that you're disappointed I'm here on my own. It's fine. And of course, thank you very much to Charles Edward Cheese for your super chat. As always, very generous, and thank you so much, mate, for your support on the channel. Hope you enjoyed that one. His chat, his message is very simple. Japan, checkered flag, Japan and cheese. They are the emojis he's used today. Thank you so much, Charles. That is incredibly generous. You know what to do, chat. 500 likes if we can get there for Charles Edward Cheese. Not for me. Not for me. I don't deserve 500 likes. Send them all to Charles. We're at 117, 900 watching, so let's try and get that a little bit higher. Let's get it to 500 for him. Thank you very much again, Charles, and to everybody else for your super chats. Jonty's popped in. Hi, Jonty. Says, I think it comes down to the big overspeed Charles was carrying for him to slow enough to make the corner. Checo would have easily overtaken. Yeah, I sort of half conceding to that. That would be the kind of thing I would think on. That would be my thinking for defence. It's not they were side by side, was it? But I still think the squeezing off track, the rejoin dangerously or whatever they want to call it, would be more frustrating. For me, I think that's more warrants a penalty. But there you go. That's just me. We're always going to disagree as a lot. We know we are F1 fans. So yeah, just to confirm, Verstappen world champion, Perez P2, Red Bull 1-2. That's not the constructors. That can be done, I think, in Austin at the earliest. Possibly might have to wait till Mexico. Imagine Mexico. Sergio Perez wins. Max Verstappen second. World championship. Done and dusted. That would be kind of perfect. We have got a decision in on Pierre Gasly, which I'll come to later properly. It doesn't affect the result, though, at the moment. So we will do Gasly later when I talk about Gasly, because there's loads to get through for that one. But he has been given a penalty for speeding under red flags. So the FIA are well and truly covering their arses. Esteban Ocon, I think we're up to then. Third team Alpine. I mean, I went best of the rest on Thursday. But what a great performance from Alpine this weekend. A perfect way to bounce back after what was a really disappointing Singapore. I should say as well, actually, before I always try and say this, if I miss anything or anything I need to talk about out of these teams I'm going through, I'll try and keep an eye on chat. But if not, then I'll come to you a little bit later and you can throw them questions at me later in the stream when we do a bit of Q&A. But absolutely fantastic drive from Ocon. Great defense again. How many times this season have we seen Lewis Hamilton and Esteban Ocon battling on track? I feel like it's at least 3 times we've seen some sort of decent battle between those two for a few laps. I might be wrong, it might only be 2, but absolutely brilliant. Some great defense, aggressive defense. He admitted afterwards, his words on Sky were, in a roundabout way, could have left more space for some of them. He was admitting they were very, very close, but still, fantastic battle. Lewis Hamilton seemed to enjoy it, so he didn't seem disappointed after the race. Just very, very happy to be battling with Ocon again. I'm sure very sick of the back of that Alpine. But yeah, really good stuff from him. Great qualifying yesterday to outdo Fernando Alonso on Saturday, who had looked quicker, hadn't he? Pretty much all weekend, 3 times apparently. Monaco, Canada, and Japan. Thank you very much. There you go, 3 times. So I said it was about 3, didn't I? It was about right for that one. So yeah, just lovely stuff from Ocon today and all weekend. He's a driver. I've said this a million times. I see so many, and I know Twitter, we're not getting into it, blah, blah, blah. But I see so many times people will say stuff like Ocon's a trash driver and he's no good and he's a load of rubbish and blah, blah, blah. But he's having a great season. Yeah, all right, Fernando Alonso would be much higher in the championship without the retirements he's had because of engine problems and things like that, reliability issues. But still, he's having a fantastic season. He's racing hard, and we seem to see a lot of him. So I'm pretty chuffed for him today, actually, just generally for his season. So great stuff from Esteban Ocon. I've got a lot more in my notes for Fernando Alonso. I feel like I need to talk more about Ocon because of his defensive driving against Hamilton, but that is really the story of his race, because he benefited from Carlos Sainz crashing out on that first lap to go from 5th to 4th place, and that was kind of it, and then just spent the rest of the race making sure nobody got past him. So that's all he can do, and I think he's very good with defense. I know he can be quite aggressive. I know he can be, but I would rather have an aggressive driver than somebody who hops out the way. Do you know what I mean? I want to see the drivers racing. I want to see the drivers pushing each other hard. I want to see them defending hard. Just don't go shoving people off the track. Is what I'm saying. Just leave enough space. Just enough space, and just have some nice hard battling. And if the driver behind is moaning because there's only just enough space, then you're doing something right. Just don't shove people off the track. Fernando Alonso, quite an eventful race for Alonso. An eventful 28 laps. So really nice move on the inside of Lewis Hamilton at the hairpin on lap 1. However, Hamilton got the better traction with the old switcheroo, as Crofty calls it, to get back past. But that was a fun little fight. Did pit under the second restart for... He pitted twice, didn't he? Pitted for a second time. That dropped into P10, which was 4 seconds behind Norris. He then was up to P8 in what felt like the blink of an eye. I'm not even kidding. I think it feels like in the time it took me to write, rejoined P10 4 seconds behind Norris, he was back up to P8. It really was super quick. The switching to the fresh inters today was the absolute key in that midfield, because I think Seb at one point was 5 seconds quicker. I think Zhou was 6 seconds quicker than Bottas, they said in commentary, because they were putting on those fresh intermediate tyres. It made such a difference. And he just cruised right up to the back of Russell, 11 seconds behind when he eventually got up into P8. 11 seconds behind Russell, caught him, passed him, and then over the line was officially, on the timing screens, 11 thousandths of a second behind Sebastian Vettel. They were side by side over the line. That was a great strategy call from Alpine. A great call. Could have been Alonso that made the call, but great call by the team overall. Fantastic overtaking, fantastic driving. Fernando Alonso, Fernandoing again. It's just what he does. So that was the key to it. Like I said, get on those fresh inters. He made it work. Seb Vettel did the same. We'll get onto him in just a second. Get on those inters at the right time. Power through the field. It was absolutely superb. So well done to him. And that's massive again in the constructors. We had a massive swing last weekend with McLaren jumping up into 4th place because of Alpine's double DNF. Today, because McLaren only got 1 point and Alpine got 4th and, did I just say 7th? 4th and 7th. Yeah, hefty points, full points as well, which now moves them back into 4th place in the constructors, 13 points clear of McLaren. That is such a fun fight between those two. And so, yeah, the constructors is just about done. I would argue 2nd and 3rd are done as well. The Drivers' Championship's done, but enjoy that fight between Alpine and McLaren. It's going to go all the way, potentially to Abu Dhabi. You'll argue that it won't. I'm sure some of you will, because Alpine do appear to have the quicker package. They have 2 consistently scoring drivers as well. But there's been so many twists and turns in that, and with Alpine's reliability, there's still a chance for McLaren. So that was absolutely brilliant stuff for them today. Great drive from Ocon, a great drive from Alonso. Can't fault either of them. This is usually where I look at chat and you tell me that somebody did something really bad and I missed it. So just brilliant from them. Also brilliant as well for Aston Martin, but I'll do them in just a moment. I need to do Mercedes, skipping over Lewis Hamilton and George Russell there. Lewis Hamilton P5, George Russell P8. Already talked about the incident at the hairpin, or the overtaking battle at the hairpin with Fernando Alonso. Very close to tagging Sainz, who had crashed, as I said, which was scary, but probably more scary for Carlos Sainz. Pretty confident on that one. Sat here watching it on TV is fine, but imagine that if you're Carlos Sainz, absolutely terrifying. Did pit on lap 2 of the restart for the Inters. Double stack from Mercedes and a good scrap with Ocon again, but lacking straight line speed. I feel like that's a conversation we have had a lot this season, is this straight line speed, this Mercedes that once upon a time, and I know we're going back a bit now, I mean, we'll go back to 2014, 15, 16, etc. That car used to be, with that power unit, just the car to beat in a straight line. It was insane how much pace they had. And now we're talking about them being really well outpaced by a Honda, which, if I'd said that to you in 2015, you'd have laughed in my face. And now by a Ferrari, and clearly by Renault as well. So it's quite incredible how Mercedes... I'll tell you what, I'll throw that to you at chat, then. I'll give you that one. Do Mercedes have the worst power unit in terms of power this season? Not in terms of reliability. I think they've got probably the best in terms of reliability, and Renault are nowhere near. But in terms of power, in a straight line, they definitely seem to be lacking. So it might not be power, it could be drag, it could be all sorts, but it's just surprising to see how poor they've been with pace at times this season. It's just, as soon as he caught Ocon, I thought, this is it, he'll get through, he'll have the speed, and he just didn't. Ocon was just pulling away. So aero, not engine, says Mohammed, absolutely. As I was saying, bit of drag, not enough drag, whatever. The aero package is pretty bad, and I think they'll change philosophy to a point. They seem to be sticking with the zero pods for next year, is the rumor, but I think they'll look at other areas that they can make that more efficient, because they can't be doing that next season. Some of the tracks we're going to again, so could be the worst, could be down there. I don't know, but just shocking to see them struggle so much, and it is quite jarring anyway, isn't it? Because you've got this team that have dominated for so long, and then they're just nowhere this season for one reason or another. So it's quite jarring anyway. But then when you put the power unit situation in there, the fact George Russell's doing so well against Lewis Hamilton, it feels like we've gone into a whole new era. They may come back next year, you never know, but it feels like a long way back, doesn't it? Even though they're P3, they're challenging for points, picking up those podiums every now and again, they still feel a long way off. So we'll see. George Russell, also sort of an eventful race. Pitted again at the restart, second lap for some intermediates. Described it as the worst decision the team has ever made, because apparently he was held in the double stack and he lost a lot of time. But the feeling at Mercedes, according to Ted Kravitz, was that they'd have lost more time had they left him out for another lap, because the track was 100% into the fact that Sebastian Vettel put the Inters on a lap before and was going 5 seconds quicker tells you it was definitely intermediate territory. So he would have lost a lot of time in that situation. So it's frustrating over the radio, but I think, haven't got his stuff at the moment, but I think he'll probably accept that one. But a couple of lovely moves is how I've worded it here, around the outside of turn 6 on the way to Dunlop. Absolutely lovely moves around the outside of, yes, slower cars, but still in those conditions, off the racing line. Really good stuff from George today, but only P8, which feels like, I mean, where did he start? P8. So for the second week in a row, we've got a driver who started P8, finished in and around that area, but actually had a more eventful race than perhaps that shows. So yeah, a good race for George. He's going to be disappointed. What was he? 1.2 behind Alonso. Alonso was coming through pretty rapidly, wasn't he? 1.3 in the end-ish behind Sebastian Vettel. Maybe had they taken the gamble and left him out another lap, perhaps, maybe, possibly, he could have had Seb. I don't know. I don't know how much time he lost in that double stack. There wasn't a graphic for it, so I couldn't note it down. But I get his frustration. But it's 8 points, and it's. I mean, what are they going to do in the constructors? Really? I mean, Ferrari 454, Mercedes 387. I think that's done. They're third. He could mathematically finish second, but he's got to win some races between now and the end of the season, so he'll be disappointed. But I don't think it was overly terrible from George Russell today at all. Before I get on to Aston Martin, anything you want me to say on Mercedes or on Alpine. I will. I've seen a couple of say it as well. We'll go over the Gasly decision in full in a moment when we get to Pierre Gasly. We get to Alpha Tauri, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later. But the red flag incident, he's got a pretty hefty time penalty, actually. I think it's 20 seconds. In lieu of a drive-through. So we'll get to that. It doesn't change anything for his race, by the way. He was P17. He drops to P18. So it's not changed anything. It's not lost points or anything like that. It's not a disaster, but I want to get onto that later anyway. Do you talk about McLaren? Not quite yet, Nelson. We're getting there. His contract would have a retirement clause in it, says Sam. You possibly talk to somebody else, Sam, if I'm reading that one out. Apologies for that one if I am doing. Toto saying earlier this year that he has accepted Max being champion for this year. I was going to say he'd have to accept it for this year. Do you mean for last year? I was going to say he has to accept it for this year because he is. Max, the greatest of all time, says Daniel. And really surprised Alpine did not blow their engine. I think that's a fair point, bearing in mind what happened in Singapore and what we've seen at times this season. It does go a little bit wrong for them, doesn't it? Why was full points given for only 50% distance? I will get into that properly in a bit. Anyone can win. Essentially, because it's all about the word resumes or resumption. So that new point structure we got was, because of what happened in Belgium, was for if a race does not resume. So if you get to 25% race distance and the red flag comes out and the race doesn't restart, then you're going to get fewer points. I think it's about 8 or 9 points, something like that, for the win. And that's so that we don't have a situation where they can just send a safety car out, do 2 or 3 laps behind it, and then award full points like they did in 2021 at Belgium. However, if a race resumes and then runs as normal, then even if it doesn't reach 100%, it is still full points. So the 75% rule, as we used to call it, I think it's still there, is if a race starts and then is red flagged and you haven't reached 75% and then it doesn't restart, then it's half points. Whereas in this situation, because the race restarted and did finish, it is full points, if that makes sense. So the only thing that can bring that 75% rule into play, or those new regulations, is if the race didn't finish or if the race didn't restart. It is confusing, but it's hard to explain without me sitting and reading the regulation, which probably just confuse everybody more. But I hope you get what I mean. We'll go into it a little bit more if you want to. I'll try and explain it a bit better in a way that I can work out in my head as I'm waffling away. But that's essentially it. So in theory, today we could have had a situation where we waited, say that the clock was ticking down, we got to 5 minutes to go, they sent the cars out, started the race on a rolling start, and they did 2 laps. Technically, that would be full points as well, because the race has resumed and it's finished. I'm not sure I like that, but at the same time, it's not something that's going to happen every week, so it is weird. It's just the FIA being the FIA. You're absolutely right. Anyone can win. FIA being the FIA. That 75% was placed by the new system, says Don. I didn't think it was, mate. I think that's still there, but I think I'll have a look. It might have been replaced. No, you might be right. I'll have a look at some point, but it's very, and that's what caused the confusion at the end, because everyone thought it was points for up to 75%, 50 to 75%, which was like 19 for the win. And so Max wouldn't have been champion because he'd have outscored Charles by 7 and Checo by 5, which would have kept both them in mathematically. So that's what caused the confusion at the end, but it was full points. So there you go. I know it's the FIA. It's confusing. Easiest way, I'm not an expert. I'm not. I don't ever pretend to be an expert or a journalist or anything mad like that. I'm just an F1 fan like you guys that wants to talk on a Sunday afternoon about Formula One. But probably the best way to just look at it is wait for the result to come out and look at what the points are at the end of it and what the FIA have decided. That's what I tend to do. Max is world champion. That's all we need to know today. That's it's bizarre. I get it. It's bizarre. Sorry, flicking pages while I've still got my mic unmuted. Let's see who's next. So we've got to get to Aston Martin, don't we? Fly through this one as well. Thank you very much, Jack, for your super chat. Says Rick will always have a seat in my heart or on my... Oh, for God's sake. Jack, you've been here 40 minutes and you've done that already to me. I'm shocked. Yes, thank you for your super chat, Jack. A little bit less than the $3,000 you donated in testing the other year. And if your missus is listening or whatever, then there you go. You'll be in trouble for that one. So, Sebastian Vettel, P6 in the race today. brilliant. I mean, what a call. I don't know if he made the call or Aston Martin made the call for the Inters, but he came in very early at the restart, the end of the first lap, put on the intermediates, and like I said earlier, was going 5 seconds quicker than anybody else. Absolutely. What a way to sign out in Japan. He's been so almost emotional all weekend about how much he loves this track and how much he's going to miss it, and even saying he wouldn't mind coming back and doing a one-off race in Japan after he's retired. Superb. And he comes and does that. I mean, that's experience as well for you. We often say, don't we, on these streams, that the experience in these kinds of races is so important. And it's Alonso today with his comeback, Vettel through the field. Don't forget as well that at the start of the race, he spun and dropped to the back. I mean, that's how well he did today. So, yeah, conditions, red flag, safety car start, all of that business plays into his hands in that situation. But it's still a fantastic call by the team and Sebastian Vettel, and a great drive to come back through whatever else. But it's what you do. Right tyre, right time. That's what Martin Brundle always said. Smashed it. Unsafe release was noted by the stewards. Apparently that was absolutely fine. I didn't really flinch at it at all. I think there's enough space in Suzuka, isn't there, to squeeze 2 down there if needs be. But I'm really pleased that Sebastian Vettel, Aston Martin, they're having a really strong end to this season. I mean, what did they do last time? 8th last time for Sebastian Vettel, 6th for Lance Stroll, 6th for Sebastian Vettel today. It's really good to see them up there having just a great end to the year, is what I'm basically saying. So, superb. Sorry, just trying to mute something. Bots and things like that in the chat while I'm trying to talk there. But yeah, I've got nothing else to add on that. It's one of the races where there's not a lot that happened, but what did happen for some drivers was quite brilliant. Lance Stroll, on a sort of brilliant, Lance Stroll, 18th on the grid, up to P11 by the end of that first lap, by the time the red flag was thrown. I mean, that is, what a start. We've always said one thing that Lance Stroll can nail is cold tyres, damp track, great start. Superb from Lance Stroll at the start. Unfortunately, didn't really come to anything in the end. Maybe a little bit later with his strategy. Lost some time there. Finished P12, but was only about 3.1 off a point. So it's not a poor performance from Lance Stroll today. 1.6 clear of Tsunoda, but it's all about the start for him. Who cares about anything else with Lance Stroll? That was just a great start from Lance. So just another really good day. Really, really good day for Sebastian Vettel and for Aston Martin and for Lance Stroll. I'm not going to say the Saturday performance thing on Stroll. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to do it. I'm sick of saying it. You know what I'm going to say. But yeah, Sebastian Vettel. A few people are already saying that Seb's their driver of the day in chat. I can see that. I think he won the official driver of the day as well, so that's good for him. Good stuff for him. And Zhou Guanyu, by the way, set the fastest lap, I believe. Although he doesn't get a point for it, it still counts as fastest lap. So I believe he is the first Chinese driver to set fastest lap in F1. Correct me if I'm wrong. Good stuff. Good stuff from him. We'll get to those in just a moment. So nothing else on Aston, except I will say, we were talking last week about obviously that great results in Singapore, moving them up into 7th in the Constructors. Can they hang on to it, and can they catch Alfa Romeo? We were quite pessimistic about the catching Alfa thing, but actually they're only 7 points behind now. So there's a very good chance that they could catch Alfa and take P6. And I'm going to repeat what I said on Sunday. If they finish 6th in the Constructors, that's a win for them based on where they've been this season. That would be quite a turnaround for them. So that seems to be what they're pushing for. And hopefully Seb goes out on a high as well. Was hoping for a bit more chaos and a slightly longer race today, if I'm honest. I would have loved to have seen Seb up there on a podium on a day like today. This is kind of the best day for that to happen. Bit of chaos, bit of water, but wasn't to be. Still, 6th place. Fantastic result for Sebastian Vettel. Just thought, actually, my timestamp's going to be a nightmare later trying to work these out, the way I'm flying through this one. Williams, can't quite believe I'm saying these words. I'm getting quite emotional. Nicola Latifi, P9. Not only did he beat his teammate today, who didn't finish because he had a mechanical issue at the start, finished 9th. 2 points, and moves ahead of Nick de Vries in the World Championship because he's been in the car longer and has other results, which are better than de Vries because de Vries doesn't have any other results. So great result for Latifi. Nice couple of points. If there is last points in F1, I'm glad he got them because it would have been a shame if he hadn't picked up points. It actually means that the only driver who hasn't scored points this year is Nico Hulkenberg, and he only took part in 2 races. So we'll let him off that one, Nico. Good stuff from Latifi. It is all I can really say. Notes, pitted on the lap 1 restart. Pity for the Inters. Was running P8, I believe, at one point. Thanks to that early switch to intermediate. So good stuff from Williams as well. He pitted, I think, the same time as Sebastian Vettel. I think that was what the unsafe release may have been. Vettel and Latifi. But, I mean, who cares when he pitted? He doesn't care. He's got 2 points on the board. Let's see what they said. I think I've got the press release in, actually, as my phone... Let's have indeed. Straight in for Williams. Lovely. Latifi says the beginning was quite tricky with the red flag and the delays. We made the right decision to pit straight away for the Inters, which was critical in jumping the cars ahead of us. I struggled at the end with the front tyres, but I'm extremely happy to hold on and get my first points of the season. Overall, I'm really happy with the team, and it's a nice morale boost. Absolutely good stuff. Good stuff. Where was he in the end then? So... 22 seconds behind Russell, only 0.6 clear of Norris. So that wasn't that was a bit closer than maybe you wanted it to be, but still, he got it over the line. A few people struggled with fronts actually, weren't they, in this race? So good job from Nicky Latifi. And Alex Albon, definitely a shame as he felt like there was a chance to maybe score some points. His teammate did it, so I think Alex Albon would have been right up there with him because you'd like to think that Williams from down there would have made the call and double stack both drivers. If that was the case, then what would Alex Albon have done with that? No offense to Latifi there, by the way. Not trying to dump on his achievement today, but you know what I mean. Had a good start, is what Albon's saying. Was really pleased with it, but then the visibility became so poor. Couldn't see the car in front of me or next to me. I couldn't even see the track. Had a light touch with Kevin Magnussen, but where we hit it, touched the radiator. We lost water pressure, and it was leaking, so we had to stop the car. So it was contact for Alex Albon, which was with Kevin Magnussen, which resulted in a water leak. So there we go. That answers that one for Albon. I will make a note of that one while I remember. Water leak, K-Mag. Scrolling it down, won't be able to read it later. Disappointed, like I say, with Latifi doing that for P9. What would Albon have done? Could have been double points today for Williams, and that would have been quite special. They're not going to go challenging those ahead of them, but they've got 8 points on the board now. If they could get double figures, that'd be nice to see before the end of the season. So, great stuff for Alex Albon. For Nicholas Latifi, could have been great stuff for Alex Albon, is what I'm saying there. Nothing really to add on that. Anything you guys want to say on Latifi other than putting the goats in chat? There's goats everywhere in my chat. What is going on? Yes. Are we doing it every time Nicholas Latifi achieves anything between now and the end of the season? Are we just going to put lots of goats everywhere? Make sure that he he gets the recognition he deserves. Wingcap says contact with Kevin Magnussen on lap 1. Say it ain't so. It is. It absolutely is. What happened to Alex has cited canvas, just in case you missed that, just to let you know. So he's saying that there was contact with Kevin Magnussen on the first lap, but it was contact with the radiator, lost water pressure and it was leaking, so had to stop the car. Does make a point about how it was extremely dangerous out there and so bad in terms of visibility. In fact, it's the worst I've ever experienced in my career so far. We are driving at 200 kph in that weather, and whatever you are seeing on external or onboard cameras, it is 100 times worse from the cockpit. So not very happy on that one. Just super quick as well, the Aston Martin one's just come in. Have a look through and see if Seb Vettel said anything different. Well, this is perfect. What a start to this press release from Aston Martin. Want to know how confusing it was at the end? Seb's first line. Obviously, it was a shame that we only got half a race. I'm not saying half points, but was it half a race? Did we do half? This is what I get confused at. Yeah, it was 28, so it would have been 53, 20. Yeah, it was half. Why am I confused at that one? But at least the people in the grandstands got to see some racing. Lovely moment as well, by the way. Alfa Romeo taking a banner out to them to say they're the best. Waiting in the drive for the restart, but I imagine it must have been rather unpleasant to sit outside in the wet for a couple of hours. I got a very good start, but then I collided with another car at the first corner, so it was contact. Really could not see anything. Not sure, maybe I aquaplaned or made a mistake, but I lost all the positions. So yeah, okay. Who was it? It was Alonso, wasn't it, he made contact with, I think he said over the radio. Pushed like crazy, managed to undercut most of the field. Has been a dream weekend for us to score 8 points is a mega result. I feel sad to have driven my last race here, but it has been a wonderful weekend. And to all the fantastic Suzuka fans, I can only say thank you. And Lance Stroll... Before we got going, I had noticed a strip of drier asphalt and decided to go for it at the start. It worked out really well. It was a really fun first lap. There was not much grip on those early laps and very little visibility. It was a tough call for race control, but it was clear the race had to be stopped when Carlos Sainz crashed. I do not think visibility was much better when we restarted, but it did get better towards the end. All in all, it was an eventful race. The fans were incredible with the weather, and now we look ahead to Austin and Mexico. So there you have it. So Seb Vettel disappointed with half a race. Sean getting confused with words, which is about right, and Lance Stroll pretty pleased with the weekend by the sound of it. So good stuff for Aston. McLaren, not so great for McLaren, to be honest. I've not got many notes on them, which isn't going to come as too much of a surprise. Lando Norris did pit on lap 2 of the restart for Inter's. Daniel Ricciardo, I've not even got notes for them, so I assume he pitted around the same time as Norris did. I felt like they were for a better result than that. 10th place for Norris. 11th for Ricciardo is 1 point. 6/10 off Latifi for Norris. Ricciardo only a couple of seconds behind, but only a second clear of Lance Stroll. So it's just a really rubbish day for McLaren. I feel like this is the kind of weather or the kind of conditions that maybe they could have pulled out a pretty mega result today, but it wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. Alpine absolutely did them, didn't they, in the end, in terms of pace today, in terms of strategy. Surprised they didn't come in and make another stop. Everything's reading 2 stops on here, but of course that includes coming to the pit lane under the red flag, so it's 1 stop really. Surprised they didn't at least try something, but obviously they decided not to for whatever reason. Just disappointing for them. It's cost them. They kind of turned it around, didn't they? Sorry, somebody sent me a link on Discord to a video which I'll have a look at in a moment, but yeah, turned it around in Singapore, got themselves in a fight, falling apart this weekend. Sorry, McLaren fans, I've got nothing really positive to say, just that it didn't really... Qualifying was okay, I think, for Norris in the end. Apparently started P10 according to my notes, Lando Norris, but I feel like he started higher than that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Ricciardo, though, yesterday, I will say this for it. Daniel Ricciardo, in qualifying yesterday, pretty decent day. Looked like he had the pace over Lando, and I thought that he was going to maybe out-qualify and we're going to get a good result today for him, but it missed out by such a fine margin yesterday in qualifying. I can't remember what it was. It was absolutely nothing, really. So disappointed he couldn't make Q3. Would have been good. I'm really hoping he gets a strong finish, but I think really the big news on Danny Rick is that he's kind of basically said not going to be in F1 next year. 1,000th of a second in qualifying off Q3 in the end. So he's not going to be in F1 next year. He's going to be taking a year out. Can't get a team. Only options available to him now are Haas and Williams. So he doesn't fancy one of them, which is a shame. Ricciardo was one of the latter pitters to Inters. Thank you very much, JM. So that's obviously what could he have done if he's maybe pitted at the same time as Lando around that same time. I don't know. But yeah, he's gone by the sounds of it. A little bit surprised he's not pushing for Haas or Williams, but if you were Haas or Williams, you know, yes, people will talk a lot about what he's achieved in F1, but you're basing it on performance now. Do you sign him if you're Haas or Williams? And if they are in for him, is it a case with Daniel Ricciardo that beggars can't be choosers? It's a little bit of a weird one. I'm sure we'll find out in the next few months. Certainly once the season's over, we might get a little more information on who they're in for, but it sounds like Haas are going for either keeping Schumacher, which is what I would do, based on other options, or signing Nico Hülkenberg are the two there, and Williams seem to be hanging on for Logan Sargent, so maybe something will open up, but it looks like a year out for Danny Rick, which is a shame. But equally, he's not really delivered, has he? He hasn't delivered. I mean, if he had delivered, he'd still be in that McLaren next year. So there you go. I take a punt of Williams, says Findlay. Ricciardo, more like... I can't even read that. Why can't I read that? I've seen you, Del. I get you, mate. Maybe all the seats were already signed, but not yet announced. Very true, Nathan. Could be. Maybe Danny Ricks inadvertently announced that in a way. Thanks to Shah for the present to Honda. I saw somebody say at the start of the stream, actually, super quickly, that Charles Leclerc has been a better teammate than anybody for Max Verstappen this season. I think you can throw Ferrari in that one. Definitely. I'm going to go quiet for just a second while I have a quick mouthful of water because I'm gagging. Don't want to start choking randomly on stream. So yeah, not much to say on McLaren. Pretty disappointing day in the end. Pretty poor weekend. I'm just going to double check that actually, just on the qualifying from yesterday because I have a feeling. I just thought, no, Norris did start 10th. I just had it in my head that he started higher. Probably get my weekends mixed up again. There you go. Where are we up to? Yuki Tsunoda, 13th. Pierre Gasly, 17th. That's changed now. He's 18th, of course, so ignore the thing at the bottom. It is P18 now for Pierre Gasly following that penalty. Tsunoda, home Grand Prix, of course. Really wanted to see a great result from him today, but not really had an awful lot in terms of notes for him either, which is annoying, but we didn't really see an awful lot of him, or I don't seem to recall seeing a lot of him. Just that he pitted for a second time under the Inters, some fresh Inters, which gave him some good pace towards the end. What was he doing? 47.6 versus Verstappen up front of 48.9. So actually, Tsunoda was going along very, very nicely towards the end. Only 1.6 seconds behind Lance Stroll. So shame he couldn't have got something today. Really fancied him for points as well, but it didn't really work out for him today. Fun fact, says Wingcap, thank you very much for your super chat. Says the F3, F2 and F1 champions all learned they were champions in the pit lane this year. That is a great stat. That's a superb stat, Wingcap. You are stat man of the day. That's fantastic. The F3 and F2 champions and F1 champions all learned they were champion in the pit lane this year. What a stat. Well done. That's great. I like that one. Yeah. I'm writing that down. That's why I've gone quiet. I'm stealing that. You know I'm stealing that one. That is a good stat. Quick tweet it, mate. Otherwise I'm going to steal it from you. Definitely. Yeah, Pierre Gasly, pit lane start because of a rear wing change. It wasn't like for like, so obviously he has to do a pit lane start. That is a regulation. I can't even read what that said. Collected the advertising hoarding on the opening lap. Really, the talking point for Pierre Gasly is the tractor. I'm not going to go off on one. I've done it on Twitter. People have told me not to rant and rave quite so much on these things. So let's just go through this. So, Pierre Gasly has been given a 20-second time penalty in lieu of a drive-through. After passing the scene of the incident, which is Carlos Sainz's crash, I've lost where I was now. After passing the incident, Gasly continued under the red flag situation at speeds which exceeded 200 kilometers an hour on multiple occasions and which reached 251 kilometers an hour at one point. The driver conceded that he now understood that there could have been marshals or obstacles on the track and admitted that he was too fast. However, in mitigation of penalty, we take into account that although the speed could not be any measure by regarded as slow. Try that again. Although speed could not by any measure be regarded as slow as required to the regulations, it was slower than the maximum speed that could be achieved under these conditions. We also take into account the shock the driver experienced on seeing a truck on the racing line in the corner of the incident. Now, let's get this part out of the way first. Pierre Gasly, if he is considered by the regulations to have been speeding under the red flag, that penalty 100% justified. As far as I can see, nobody is saying that Pierre Gasly was in the right in that situation. He should not be speeding. That is it. It's as simple as that. You don't speed under the safety car. If he isn't, I find it quite odd they say that he was slower than the maximum speed, but obviously not within the regulations. So, yeah, he's breached the regulation. There's no sympathy there for Gasly for me. If you are speeding under red flags and you have gone quicker than the regulations allow you to, that's a penalty. So let's get that out of the way first, so nobody thinks I'm trying to make out like he's Mr. Innocent, he's done nothing wrong. However, there was a tractor there on the track in pretty, excuse the language, anyone gets offended, but piss poor conditions. Soaking wet track. Visibility was horrendous. We're in Suzuka, and there's a tractor, not in a gravel trap, not on the grass, on the racing line, on the track, recovering Carlos Sainz's car. Before the FIA keeps saying, well, the red flag had come out, the race was neutralised. The red flag hadn't come out. The replays show every single driver, including leader Max Verstappen, going past the tractor on track under safety car. The red flag had not come out, so don't believe that for a second. Was the race neutralised under the safety car? Officially, yes. Was the field bunched up? No, not at all. That should have been weighted. You should not be sending tractors out until everybody's lined up behind a safety car, or in the case of a red flag, everyone's in the pit lane. It really is as simple as that. I don't know why we have to have this conversation. I don't know why it's confusing. That should be the rule. Everybody lined up neatly behind a safety car, then you put the tractor out to recover the vehicle, or you throw the red flag and you wait till everyone's back in the pits. It's no more difficult than that. The reason it gets me, and I said it on Twitter, is that as I'm watching that happen, I look to my left and there's a picture of Jules Bianchi on my shelf, a signed picture of Jules Bianchi I've got. And I just thought to myself, you know, when the red flag came out, better to be safe than sorry. And then you see that and you think, what have we learned? A lot of people were moaning on Twitter saying that we were overreacting and we were making a fuss over nothing. If you think that, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm telling you, you're wrong. We're not overreacting. We're not being dramatic. If you think that, go back and watch Suzuka 2014. Look at what happened after that. The reason so many changes were made by the FIA on safety. There's a line somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. It is somebody else tweeted it from the investigation. Go and watch that and then come back and talk to me, because I'm telling you now, that is just unacceptable. And if you don't want to listen to me, I don't blame you. I don't want to listen to me either. If you don't want to listen to me, or you don't want to listen to everybody else on Twitter, listen to the drivers. The drivers aren't often united on things, but they're united on this. So this is from, Mark Gallagher over on Twitter posted this. This is from the investigation, the report on the Bianchi incident. It says it is considered fundamentally wrong to try and make an impact between a racing car and a large and heavy vehicle survivable. It is imperative to prevent a car ever hitting the crane and or the marshals working near it. I'll read that again. It is imperative to prevent a car ever hitting the crane and or the marshals working near it. Do not send. I don't care what anyone's argument is. A Gasly, 100% penalty, done. Right. You don't send tractors out on track. I can't understand how we're having this conversation 8 years on, almost exactly. 8 years on. I mean, whatever. Are we not going to learn? Is there like a limit? Do the FIA have to wait now for another driver to die before they do something? It's just so stupid as well. And then you see bloody Sky on their Sky pad. I'm going to try not to kick off, but Sky on their Sky pad focusing pretty much solely on Gasly for ages and then going, oh, but we don't think the tractor should be there. Maybe we should have brighter lights on the tractor. No, the tractor shouldn't be there. Then other replays come to light of cars, I think, recovering Carlos Sainz's car, and then you've got a marshal on the racing line and Gasly goes flying past. So Gasly, again, wrong for speeding, make that clear. But that tractor and that marshal should never be put in that position. And I feel like on these streams in this season, we're talking over the last 18 months, maybe longer now. It could even be last couple of years if you think back to Turkey and the tractor on track there in practice when the race was the practice session was restarted with the tractor out in the runoff area. I feel like we're talking more about the FIA's incompetence, cock-ups and cover-ups than we are racing sometimes. And that's not good. That's not good for F1. It's not good for the fans. It's not good for the sport. It's not good for the drivers, the teams, the sponsors. It's shocking. Absolutely shocking. And it's such a stupid... It's such an easy thing to solve. Do you know what I mean? It's such a simple thing to solve. Do not put a tractor on track unless either A, all cars are lined up behind a safety car, or B, you're going to throw a red flag and you get them in the pit lane. Saying the red flag came out and Gasly should have slowed. He should have been slower. Of course he should have been. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but he also, Jenson Button made the point. You can't slam the brakes on in those conditions as soon as you see the red flags, because then he's heading straight to that tractor or the wall, and that puts more people in harm's way. So it's not as simple as just stop your car because the red flags come out. You can't do that. It's not safe. So I don't know what the answer is to what the FIA is up to at the moment, but the answer to this one is very simple. I don't think we should have a red flag for every single incident. Let me get that clear, because otherwise we're going to be red flagging constantly. But in those conditions, it was clear the red flag was coming anyway. The red flag did eventually get thrown, but I just don't see why the marshals... I mean, surely the FIA must have known in advance that we're going to have to red flag it. They're not... Well, they are stupid, aren't they? But they're not completely stupid. They can't be. They're in that position. It's just shocking to... I'm angry is what I am. I said it to... It was Jonty or Stewart or both. I said I cannot express just how angry I am right now. because it is so simple. Even going back to the Bianchi incident, and that brought in as a virtual safety car, we didn't even need the virtual safety car. Just don't have a tractor there. You know, Bianchi, we're not going to get into it too much because we're talking about a race today, but Bianchi was travelling too quickly under yellows. I don't think many people will dispute that. But the reality is that regardless of how fast he was going, if the tractor wasn't there at the side of the track, he'd still be alive. Or would probably still be alive. You can never be 100% sure, of course you can't, but he doesn't go under the tractor. And I don't understand why this is so hard. I was hoping to hear, as wrong as it sounds, I was hoping to hear the FIA would say it was a rogue marshal situation. Can you remember Korea? Few years ago now, we're going back, but Korea, when that fire truck, that fire pickup or whatever you want to say, just drove itself out on track, and Charlie Whiting went absolutely bananas about it. He was so mad and had to throw the safety car super quickly because somebody had just sent a truck out to go and put a fire out rather than waiting for the race to be neutralised. I was kind of hoping it was that kind of situation because I was like, if this is an FIA call, then Jesus Christ. But then the stuff that came out afterwards that just wasn't completely honest from them about how, well, the race had been red flagged, so it was safe to send the tractor out. The race hadn't been red flagged. The race was red flagged after the tractor had been sent out. Cars had already gone past it under the safety car. It's just not acceptable from a governing body that's supposed to be governing, in air quotes, the pinnacle of motorsport. Safety should come before anything else. That should be paramount in that situation. You know, it's just one thing after another. We've got countless. I mean, if Jonty's here, I'm sure he's happy to list you somewhere on Twitter everything they've done over the last few years on safety that's absolutely questionable. We've got everything that happened with Ferrari and their power unit, everything that happened in Abu Dhabi. We've got something else coming out tomorrow that's going to set people off from the FIA. It's just what we shouldn't be talking about them. I mean, today we can because nothing really happened in the race, but that shouldn't be what this sport is about. And there were some rumours a couple of months ago, I think it is now, that F1 were potentially, and these are only rumours, so don't quote me on this, but that potentially F1 were looking at a breakaway because they were kind of sick with the FIA. It was around the same time as all the jewellery stuff was going on, and it wasn't the direction they wanted to go in with everything, and talk of a breakaway. You can't blame them, F1, can you? If they turn around and say, we're going to bog off, we're bigger than you. I'm sure the FIA will fight hard. F1 contributes massively to them financially as a sport, not literally, but as a sport. But you wouldn't blame F1. I can't get my head around it. Because, again, it's so stupid and it is just such an easy solution. I'll see what you're saying in chat and then we'll roll on, because I'll sit here chuntering all day. Like, I forgot I was live for a minute. I'm just sat here like I'm talking. Like Jonty sat next to me. I'm just chuntering at him. Just without the beer. A bit early for alcohol, although some of the FIA stuff, you do tend to need a drink. Let's see what you guys are saying in chat on this one. You can rant all you want about the FIA. Thank you. No, I got myself into trouble the other week, didn't I, with ranting and raving about stupid conspiracy theories that don't even exist and aren't even a thing. Please drop a like, by the way, while I'm just scrolling through the chat. 982 watching, 255 likes. Let's try and get that 500 for Charles Edward Cheese. And don't forget to subscribe as well if you're new. First of all, welcome. Previews for the rest of the season and race reactions as well. So plenty to come. And then I might do a channel update in December because things are changing and they could be quite drastic. Don't worry, race reactions will still be here, but we'll change them up a little bit as well. So let's see what you're saying on this one. We want rants. Yeah. Miss ZZ says, tractor on track is clearly wrong, but why does Gasly drive at 250 behind the safety car past the point he picked up debris on the lap before? Did he think about further debris or marshals being trackside? As I say, I completely agree with the Gasly penalty, but the tractor shouldn't be there. I think we're agreeing on that. Miss ZZ. That's a mouthful. Thank you very much. It is rant worthy, but I can't. I'm trying to find. I mean, if he was speeding, then fair enough. But seriously, could they have not waited until everyone was in the pits before bringing out the tractor? That's from JM. The speed and the tractor are two separate incidents, says Sam. you bang on there, quite frankly. It's the same place, isn't it, on the track, but it's completely different incidents. The penalty is the same regardless if the tractor is there or not. That's a totally different topic. Absolutely agree, Mario. Anyone ever found out if last week those marshals were actually on track before yellow flag ended, or was it indeed a replay? But as I understand it, that was a replay. I think I covered that in Sunday's stream. It was a replay. It just didn't say replay on the screen. That's what the FIA said. So that was, it had gone green well after they were gone. So I think the replay was just the amusing moment of the marshals pulling the front wing from under the barrier. Gasly fast but dim. I was shocked when they were behind the safety car and past the truck where Sainz had just aquaplaned off, says Greg. Slower than the maximum speed, lol, says Space. Good morning, August. Good afternoon. Good morning, mate. If you're in the UK, I don't know if you are. And the dummies at Sky did not make it any better, says Chris B. I had to turn the coverage off and walk away for a bit. They later went on to say, look, we're not saying the tractor that the FIA are right. What we're saying is that Gasly shouldn't be speeding, and I completely agree. But the bigger issue there is the tractor on track. As everyone else is saying, two separate incidents. We can deal with the Gasly one separately. The FIA need to be... frankly, they need to be pretty hardly slammed by the drivers for that. Not literally, obviously. Or fights breaking out in the drivers' briefing, but they need to be sat down with the FIA either before Austin or when they get there in the drivers' briefing and saying, we're not having that. You do that. I mean, Alexander Wirtz, head of the GPDA, has said something on Twitter as well, a few others too. I saw Findlay, Bianchi's dad, was not very happy at all over on Instagram. Bless him. Not good. Why weren't you ranting about this at Monza, says Mario. There wasn't anything to rant about at Monza, was there? What would I be ranting about? A safety car finish, which doesn't matter because that's in the rules. Was it? No. We did rant about it. I know you are, Mario. No, I'm with you now. I know we did. We did complain about it. We discussed the possibility that surely in that situation maybe we need to have red flags for incidents like that because there's a tractor on track. And I think we had the conversation about something a few months ago now in Formula E where there's a street track where there's a car dangling in the middle of the track and cars were still going around. In that situation, maybe we do need a red flag. But the Ricciardo situation initially, the safety car was out, but there was a lot of miscommunication around it and people got very confused and thought that everything was done by the book in that situation when actually there were cars still flying around past marshals. We did complain about that one. The difference there, if you can call it a difference, is that at least it was dry and people could see the tractor coming around the corner. Gasly didn't see that tractor till the last minute. If he'd have been on the racing line, he'd have hit it. I'm absolutely certain of that. So that's the difference there. It's still the same argument because it's a tractor on track, but very different conditions if you follow what I'm saying. It took me a minute to get what you meant there, and I was like, what happened in Monza? And then I remembered that was so much has happened. So much has happened. How many red flags would we have had this season? If every car recovered require one, would we finish any race? No. So I completely agree, Del. I don't think we should have it for every single one, but yeah. Admiral, let's say if Gasly was going slow but still aquaplanes and loses control, what then? Well, this is the other thing. I'm sure, and I'm not a technical expert, you know that, but I'm sure that driving slowly in wet conditions is as dangerous as driving quickly because of aquaplaning and not having the downforce to keep you. I don't know if that's the same now with, I'm not very good at this kind of thing. Jonty's Corner, Jonty's Corner, you got your full name, mate. Says Turkey, Imola, Singapore, Monaco, and more and more. Yeah. You can't red flag every crash. As Del says, we'd be here forever. Definitely. That's it, Richard Potts. No downforce. Thank you. Would have been nice to have Martin this weekend. We would have had some sanity. I'll tell you what I will do then. We'll read this and then I will move on to somebody else because my pictures have caught up with me now. So I just want to read what Martin Brundle said on Twitter in case you missed it. So he's not in Japan this weekend. He said, should have been an instant red flag with a stricken car in a critical position in those conditions. That's the key, those conditions. Clearly, debris on track 2 should never, ever be a tractor on track until the cars are all collected up behind a safety car or in the pits. Gasly can't take all the blame here, is what Martin Brundle said. So a message there to Sky almost. And he's absolutely bang on. He's bang on. Yes, the Gasly thing's separate, as we keep saying, but he's absolutely bang on with that. It's unacceptable. And Martin Brundle has been talking about this since 1994, pretty constantly. And here we are. So yeah, let's roll on because I'll be here all day. We'll come if you've got any questions about it, I can do those later as well. let's just finish off the field super quickly. So where are we up to? Kevin Magnussen in the Haas and Mick Schumacher. So Kevin Magnussen, great move on Stroll in Degner 1. Nice little move on the inside there. Do like moves into Degner 1. Not often do we see them. So good stuff from K-Mag. And a really nice move as well on Valtteri Bottas on the outside of 12 and then the inside of Spoon when he got there. Really nice from K-Mag. Now we know he had contact on the first lap as well with Alex Albon. So I'll mention that again just in case anybody wasn't aware of that. 4/10 clear of Valtteri Bottas and 10 seconds off Yuki Tsunoda in the end. Mick Schumacher, 17th place now officially, of course, because he's moved up because of Gasly's penalty. Still not a great day. I think Haas, I feel like Haas at the time were doing the right thing, or I felt at the time like Haas was doing the right thing by leaving him out because the track still looked quite wet. I know Vettel was flying, but I thought, give it a couple of laps. If somebody ditches it into the wall or sticks it in the wall, he makes a pit stop on the safety car. That's a great shout by Haas. It didn't work out, though. He just ended up eventually going backwards. He was the only driver on wets for quite a while. Eventually had to pit him anyway. But I feel like that gamble was worth it for Haas. It's one of those, isn't it? It's in fact, Admiral Scrub says, Haas gambled. Unfortunately, it came up with snake eyes. Basically, yeah. If you're Haas, if you're a Williams or something like that, and you're a little bit further back, it's worth the risk, isn't it? If everyone pits for Inters, you may as well stay out, be in P2, P3, whatever, leading the race. And then if a safety car comes out, it's a genius move. If it doesn't, they look a little bit silly. But it's just the way it goes sometimes. So I think it was the right call. It just, with hindsight, it didn't work. So perhaps we could argue it wasn't. And he was really going backwards, but he tried. And I think that's fair enough. Not a perfect weekend from Mick by any stretch. Not a great one. Crashed, of course, after the session had finished on Friday and stuck it in the wall and had to miss FP2. So, again, aquaplaning, it happens. Not going to go too hard on him for that one. But, not a great race in the end. But I think worth the gamble. Valtteri Bottas, 15th. Zhou Guanyu in 16th place. Bottas 4/10 behind Magnussen. And Zhou only 5/10 behind Bottas. So that's all good fun down there. Zhou, as I said earlier, set fastest lap, and I believe the first Chinese driver to do so as well. So congrats to him. No points for fastest lap, of course, because he was 16th. Wasn't in the top 10. I have literally nothing on Bottas. Literally nothing on him at all. I'll have a look for the press release in a minute. Zhou spun on lap 1, eventually pitted for the Inters. He was another one that tried to gamble to stay out a little bit longer on the wets. Didn't work. They gave up a little bit quicker than Haas did, though. Couple of laps later, I think it was. Did make a second stop as well for the Inters, which would explain how he got the fastest lap. Super quick. 4 seconds quicker than Bottas. 6 seconds quicker than Bottas at one point after putting those new Inters on. So, absolute no-brainer. Like I said earlier, that was clearly the right thing to do in terms of strategy in that midfield. Get those tyres on. And then go for it, really, is what I'm trying to say. And just as I say that, look at that, 11:31, the press release has just come through. Valtteri Bottas, we'll start with him because I've got nothing on him, said, conditions were very difficult today, in particular at the beginning of the race. The first couple of laps were quite risky, mostly because visibility wasn't great from my position. It was a bit sketchy, love that word. We seem to have good pace, especially as the track dried out a bit, but unfortunately it was difficult to overtake today. I think most of the drivers struggled with that, which was a shame as I ended up stuck behind Magnussen for pretty much all of the race. We can still find some positives from the weekend. We were super close to getting into Q3 yesterday, so that's good. It's a small improvement and we must aim for it for the final races of the season. And Zhou Guanyu says, I have positives to take from the weekend, even though we didn't score. It was nice to see that we can still be so close and have good pace. Furthermore, it being my first time in Suzuka, I learned a lot over the weekend. Overall, it was a typical Sunday with weather changes and very low visibility. At the start, I suffered a spin in the hairpin, meaning I had to come back from the bottom. No contact there, was there, as far as I'm aware, and he's not said anything about contacting his things. I think that was just driver error. Quite far behind, and there was a lot of spray coming my way from the cars in front, so I felt like the best option was to stay out on the wets. We did that, and when we saw the Inters were clearly faster, I knew the gamble was lost still. We gave it a try, and I got to gain my first ever fastest lap for that. We can be quietly confident for the future. The upgrades we introduced this weekend are looking positive. So, a bit of a slow end to the season for Alfa Romeo, but it's good to see them. Yeah, thank you for the stuff. It's good to see them competitive this weekend, is what I'm going to say. Thanks for the stuff you're sending me on Discord, by the way. It's just helping me keep an eye on things. Mattia Bonotto saying how fast FIA took the decision to sanction Leclerc is ridiculous and unacceptable. Last race, it took them an infinite number of laps to take a nonsense decision. We will protest in the appropriate offices. So I don't think there's going to be an official protest. Let me have a drink a moment. Sorry. It's a problem with the solo streams. I've got no time to breathe and get a drink. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be any official protest to anything. But I think probably what he means, because that looks like a translation, maybe he's going to pop into the FIA and say, what are you doing? Joke, mate, not having it. And I sort of agree with him, actually. I think it took all that time to get Perez's decision right, and they still got it wrong in a lot of people's eyes. Then how are they able to take that decision on Leclerc instantly? Like I say, probably more to do with the fact there's a championship up for grabs and the FIA needed to get it decided, because it was confusing at the end. But imagine... Actually, it's a great question to put to you all, actually. I was just going to say, imagine you're sat there 3 hours after a race and we don't know if Max Verstappen's world champion. Everyone's gone off air. Nobody's really paying attention. Then they crown a world champion. It doesn't look good, does it? So, but this is a good question. Is it better that that the FIA takes as long as they need to come to a right decision than just to sling something out and come up with the wrong one? I'm not saying any decisions were wrong, but we talk about how quickly they can make decisions and how quickly they then don't another weekend. But it's surely more important that the FIA get to the right decision, the right conclusion, rather than rushing something out and messing it up. I guess is my argument. I suppose it shouldn't matter if there's a world championship on the line or not, if that is the reason. It should take as long as it needs to take. But maybe they thought that was cut and dry. I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Yeah, we'll do driver of the day in a second. Like I say, don't forget to drop a like. We're 100 and that's some shocking maths, Sean. We're a couple hundred away yet from the target of 500 for Charles Edward Cheese. Thank you for all your super chats as well, and for those that are subscribing, massively appreciate that one. Slighted Canvas says 40 minutes after race should be the cut-off time for any investigations. It did. See, this is the thing, didn't it? It did make the whole ceremony hilarious. So it gives us something we'll always remember. I feel a little bit for Max, though. He's come over the line. As he came over the line, Crofty was talking about Leclerc, so he didn't even get an over the line for the victory, and he didn't get an over the line champion of the world, which is a shame. I'm sure they'll dub it over if they need to. Quick Crofty record this, but I feel a bit from there, and then the mess about it's supposed to be second world championship, able to celebrate properly, and he's sort of sat in the driver room going, but I'm not world champion. What are you talking about? I don't know. I can't get my head around the FIA this weekend at all. What have I missed? The only notes I had on Bottas was him being the only driver saying the whole warm-up is too wet. That's a good point. Thank you, Warren. I did make notes on that. Again, you can hit my paper. So, oh, that's not the page. What am I doing? Oh, my God. So what we've got. So, Hamilton was happy to race. Ocon says visibility was better. Leclerc said it was not too bad. Perez said it was getting better. This is at the restart. Bottas says visibility was too poor. Verstappen questioned more rain and then said it was soon be inters. And Ricciardo said the visibility is the bigger issue rather than the track conditions. They were not too bad. So few mixed up and down the field, but I tend to agree with what was being said in commentary, to be fair, that if you're taking the advice of people in that situation, you need to be taking the advice from people further down the field, because number one, they have the most to gain from the race starting, so there's a little bit less bias there. You know, Max Verstappen, for example, or Charles Leclerc or Lewis Hamilton, if they're leading in that situation, they're always going to say, you know, well, let's not worry, we'll just make sure we're right first, because, you know, let's run a few laps under the safety car. They could say that. There's a little bit of bias there, whereas a Bottas who's down the field has got poor visibility and will want the race to start because he'll want to gain some positions. So I'd have listened to Bottas and co a bit further back, but at the same time, it was okay, wasn't it? It was still very wet. Visibility was poor initially, but it got better, and that's something. There's a wider issue that we'll get into anyway with race starts and things like that in Formula One at some point. But driver of the day, who have you got? Let me know. Sebastian Vettel is the official driver of the day. I think fair. Who have you decided? Pop a surname in chat. I will read a few off in just a moment, give you a few shout outs for those. For me, I think it's an interesting one for me because Max Verstappen is a very easy choice because 27 seconds in 28 laps, well controlled, difficult conditions. Like I say, great pace. Strategy was perfect from Red Bull. They knew when, they pitted at the right time. They could have left him out for another lap. They don't have to make that call with the race leader. They can wait another lap in theory, but they knew that was going to be silly because of timing, so that was all perfect. Just generally bang on. Great to be able to fight back against Leclerc in that first corner or two to keep that position. Got to remember as well, at that restart, the restart proper, he's the first one to every single damp patch. He's the first one to every bit of standing water, and he didn't stick it in the wall. So I think he deserves an absolute shout for driver of the day. The thing is, I am struggling not to give it to Sebastian Vettel because absolutely Max deserves it. I'd even argue Esteban Ocon deserves it actually as well for his defence on Lewis Hamilton. But Sebastian Vettel spun on the first lap, then dropped to last, pitted at the perfect time for the intermediates, undercut most of the field, got himself into P6 and held off Fernando Alonso towards the end. I think that's pretty damn special from Sebastian Vettel today. Yes, he did make that mistake to spin, and usually I'd say that shouldn't really count because it's a mistake, but it's hard not to pick him. Exactly, Del. That's why I'm saying it's hard to pick him. It's hard not to pick him. It's tricky. I'm gonna break my rule and go with Seb. I think a little bit different in that if he'd taken somebody else out with him, then I wouldn't have given him driver of the day, if that makes sense. It was his mistake. He ended up in the gravel. No harm done to anybody else is kind of my argument there. I think Ocon absolutely deserves a shout. Max Verstappen absolutely has got to be right up there as well. And I think Fernando Alonso for his calls later on with his extra pit stop to come back through. I think maybe not driver of the day, but deserves a nod, definitely. So I think they're the three for me. Verstappen, Ocon, Vettel, but I'm going to give it to Seb. Richard Potts says Vettel. Wingcap says Minister of Defence Checo. Is it Ashwari or Ashwari says Vettel. Andras says Latifi. Oh, good shout on Latifi. Yes, of course. A couple of points on the board as well. Good stuff from Latifi. Del says Alonso. Cargi says Verstappen. Owen says Latifi. David's gone with Verstappen. Absolutely dominant. Manx says Alonso. Franca says Alonso. Unhinged Gaming says Seb for me. Chat refreshing. There you go. Elian says the wet sprayed more than the inters. We want to talk about the wets as well. I've got some notes I wanted to go over as well. I'll try and remember to do that one. Chris B says Ocon, Alonso. Seb can't choose. Alex says Vettel 100%. Ocon driver of the day for Thomas, for JM, and for D. Shepsis. Oh, I'm sorry. You know who you are. I butcher names and terrible. Adam says Vettel. Sam's gone still. Max, he won by 1 second a lap. That's what was umming and ahhing over Sam, to be honest. But give it to Seb. He might not have another driver of the day drive between now and the end of the season. Max Verstappen will probably have 4. So I can give him that one there. Kalian says Vettel as well. Pascal says Joe and Latifi. Scrolling through. Oh, it's done a jump, so I'm going to lose some here. Sorry. Warren says Alonso. Koff Latifi. Miss ZZ says Checo. Legend again. Jack. I'm not even gonna no. Free saying what I was saying. It's self-inflicted at first corner incident. Hard to pick him. I'm picking Ocon. Rebel domination in Japan and Australia. Absolutely. Let's go with a few more then. Ocon defending for about 25 minutes with the gap to Hamilton never getting above a second. Absolutely agree. Fantastic from Ocon this weekend. Like I said, Alonso seemed to be right up there fighting for. At times it felt like in practice, I know practice is practice, doesn't really count, but it felt like he could have been fighting for a front row start or something crazy like that. Top 4 start in qualifying. Then Ocon comes in and he's like, yeah, got you. Ankit says Ocon as well. Vinit says Max. Ashinta says Ocon. Fly High says Seb. Trying to not read the same people out twice. And I think we've read that one. Yeah, Fly High says Seb. I think I just said that one. We'll leave it there then. Max or Ocon is another shout. Alonso was good all weekend. He was indeed. So if you've got any questions, pop them in chat. If there's anything I've missed, please do bring it to my attention. Anything not like somebody sneezed on lap 8, but something that actually matters, something serious in the race that I missed, throw it at me. If you've got any questions, I'll answer those as well for well, maybe not 20 minutes, but I did just want to, there's some news this weekend. I'm sure you've all heard it and you've seen it, but for those who haven't, I will just confirm. Pierre Gasly is going to Alpine. I know, I can't believe it. I'm so shocked. We haven't known that for what feels like about 8 years. So Pierre Gasly is going to Alpine. Absolutely, I think great deal for Alpine. Apparently, some reports saying they've paid $10 million to buy him out of his contract. Don't know how true that is, but that's interesting. I mean, I don't think that's a bad deal for a driver like Pierre Gasly. If you're not going to keep Alonso and you don't manage to keep your junior, then Pierre Gasly ain't a bad backup option, is he? So I think that's great for them. I actually think it's a fantastic move for Gasly as well, because I do feel like next year would have been his last year at AlphaTauri, and with Lewis Hamilton saying that he's going to be staying a little bit longer and seats tied up. I mean, no one's going anywhere at Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren are tied down long term. They're not like an Alpha with Audi. There's not many options out there for the end of next year for 2024. So I think getting in that Alpine now is a really smart move for Gasly, and getting out of the Red Bull program is good for him. Obviously, he owes Red Bull a lot for his career. Of course he does. He owes him everything almost. They got him into F1. They gave him his chance at Toro Rosso, at Red Bull, and at AlphaTauri again. So he owes them that, and he's grateful for that. You read the press release, he absolutely is. But it's right now for him to move on, and he can forge his own career without them now. And he, away from those shackles. Let's get all poetic or whatever. I'm really happy for him to get that deal done, and even just as happy as well for Nick De Vries to get himself into an F1 seat for next year. He will replace Gasly at AlphaTauri again. Worst kept secret in F1, another one. But fantastic for him too. So congratulations, Nick De Vries. A lot of people think he should have been given a chance sooner. He was in the mix for a seat this year, but it didn't really work out. Fantastic performance in Monza. Apparently that swayed it. Doesn't surprise me. And apparently Max Verstappen as well said, give Helmut Marko a call, which is an interesting one. So great for De Vries. Curious, I saw some tweets on it today, and I've not followed FE that closely, but it is curious that he gets the seat this year after what hasn't been a great season in FE for him, but he didn't get it after his championship year. But that's the way it falls sometimes in Formula One. Great news for him, and I think he'll do well at AlphaTauri. It says a lot about their driver program. Maybe that nobody's ready just yet, but who knows what's going to happen in 2024. It will be, when it Christ, we're in 2023 next year already. Bloody hell. Where does the time go? Yeah. So that's your big news really this weekend. In terms of I said it earlier, in terms of the other talk, Haas apparently deciding between Hülkenberg and Schumacher. In my view, if that's your option, stick with Schumacher. And Logan Sargent. I think Williams are pretty keen to get him in that car. And it makes sense, by the way. Makes a lot of sense. 3 US races next year. 3 races in the USA. Miami, Austin, Las Vegas. Williams would be crazy not to put their American junior in that car if the opportunity is there to do so. He needs to finish, I believe it's 5th or higher in F2. Someone says 6th or higher, but I thought it was 5th or higher in F2. Either way, if he can do that, then he gets his super license, and I think that's a no-brainer. They're going to turn up to Miami, Austin, and Las Vegas with an American driver. They're going to have some very big weekends behind the scenes on the commercial front, so it makes a lot of sense for Williams. That's a really smart move, so that's what I'm expecting. And I think on the Mick Schumacher thing, it's nothing against Hülkenberg. I like Hülkenberg. I've done videos about how much I like Hülkenberg, but he's had lots of chances, and I feel like if a driver like Hülkenberg keeps getting lots of chances, why shouldn't Mick get another one, a third year? I don't think he's even been that bad this season. Yeah, he's had some pretty hefty crashes, but so did Tsunoda last year, and he got a contract for this year, and I don't know. I just think I'd give him another year, see how he gets on. He also brings sponsorship. They've not got their title sponsor at the minute, Haas, have they, for obviously decisions taken at the start of the year. So bringing in that one-on-one sponsorship money is going to help them as well. So and I do think there is an element as well of better the devil, which maybe doesn't sound like I'm selling Mick all that well, but I hope you get what I mean. I think that's what I would do. I would keep Mick Schumacher for one more year. And if he crashes a load of tyres next year and he's absolutely terrible, then maybe look elsewhere for 24, even warn him, say you need to step it up. Go and look at getting Nico Hülkenberg in a reserve or something like that. We've got somebody who can step in if you're not performing, or you stick it in the wall every weekend. Whether that's a bit too much pressure, I don't know. But I think 3 seasons. I agree with Franz Tost with Yuki Tsunoda. 3 seasons, lots of time to learn everything. You've got your first year to make your mistakes, second year to grow, and third year to really deliver. That seems fair to me, but it'll come down to money, I'd imagine, as well, to a point. But yeah. I don't know Sighted Canvas. I've not seen anything official on that one. Yeah, I'll leave it at that one. I don't want to go speculate on things like that, but I've not heard anything, is the answer to that one. Yes, already talked about the tractor and the onboard. Is it Frido or Frido? I've already talked about that one. We did it a little bit earlier. Tried not to get too wound up, just stayed as calm as I could, because it's really bloody annoying. My general takeaway from that, just to bring you up to speed, was that it shouldn't be happening, and tractors should not be on track until either everybody's lined up behind a safety car, or in the case of a red flag, everyone's in the pit lane. And the separate incident, the Gasly thing, absolutely right to penalise him for speeding under the red flag. So, are we seeing Prime Alonso now, says Owen? No. No. We've had Prime Alonso. I think he's just that good. His prime was that good. And he's just stayed really, really strong. I don't think this is his prime. Prime Alonso, you could argue World Championship winning Alonso's Prime Alonso, but he had some pretty good races elsewhere over the years. Yeah. I'm not answering that one. We do that every year. You will need to change your statistics. Most F1 wins next time. Verstappen 33 instead of Alonso 32. Yes. If Alonso wins, that'll be 33. I mean, look, I'm going to take a drink before I say this potentially controversial statement, but I don't think it is that controversial. Alonso should be on 31 wins anyway, so Max should already be on that graphic. Should have been. He did nothing wrong in Singapore 2008, but it was still race fixing by his team, and I believe the whole team should have been disqualified from that event. Nothing against Fernando. Any Alonso fans, I'm not criticising him. He did nothing wrong. It was a team that did it. Specifically, I think it was Briatore, wasn't it, and Simmons and Piquet Jr. But I still think race fixing, driver from the team that fixed the race wins, it should still be null and void. But, well, not the race necessarily, because if you null and void the Singapore, not the Singapore Grand Prix, yeah, it was Singapore 2008. If you null and void that race, Felipe Massa's world champion, so they can't do that, and that would cause uproar. So I still think that should be a disqualification. But it's yeah, I'll get over it eventually, I promise, on Crashgate. It's been a while, hasn't it? But I'm just making a point. Somebody brought up about the graphic. Fernando is just insane. He's 41 and still driving this good, says Just Mango. He's pretty damn good, isn't he? I think he'll do all right, Fernando Alonso. Still young, of course. I'd say Alonso's still got a lot to give, says Admiral Scrub. Looking forward, actually, next year, seeing him at Aston Martin. How that's going to work out for him. The money's there, isn't it? So, yeah. How about Latifi taking a wrong turn and blaming the car, says Chris B. It depends on your outlook. I'd say he was taking Alain Prost's line into that corner. So, I mean, if a 4-time world champion, ultimately a 4-time world champion is going to do that, multiple champion at the time, then, you know, who am I to criticise Latifi for that one? Funny there's something odd with the car. I did hear that one. That was quite funny. So, I want to see Ricciardo do Bathurst next year, says Sam. Where do we think Ricciardo will go then? If he's not going to be in F1 next year, as it sounds like he won't be. Oh, well, I think it's risky for him to sit on the sidelines and wait, because lots of options out there, not many seats available. He's not exactly going out on a high, is he? Difficult. I mean, IndyCar or NASCAR, yeah, that's a good shout. It's a CPB. I think he'd enjoy IndyCar, actually. Apparently he's really popular in America. If you are in America, let me know. But I think he apparently is really popular in America. So, yeah, Chris B says, actually, sabbatical never really works out in F1. I think a lot of things, it depends on how you left the sport, and how you were performing. So Esteban Ocon had a year out, didn't he? And then he came back, but he was still young, had a bit of backing, had a particularly terrible season the year before, as I recall. In fact, I think back end of the season he started top 3 in Belgium, hadn't he, in those mixed conditions? So he'd been doing well up against Sergio Perez. In fact, I'm gonna have to check that now because it's bugging me. It was I can't be bothered to find it now. I've forgotten what year it was. But yeah, no, he was doing all right. And he was out because there were no seats available, whereas Daniel Ricciardo's out because nobody wants him. That sounds terrible. You know what I mean? He's not been performing this year. There are 2 seats available, and they don't seem to want him. So it's not really he's not taking a sabbatical through choice, is what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. Alonso had a sabbatical as well, worked out well. So it doesn't always, but I think it depends, Chris, on like the circumstances around it. If Daniel Ricciardo had turned around in Monaco and said, I'm going to take a year out, then I think I'd look at it differently. But because he's kind of going because there aren't any other options for him, says it all, doesn't it? Raikkonen, of course, rallying, didn't he? Yeah, that's how I view that. So Ricciardo is no Alonso, though, says Freeze. Absolutely. Ricciardo and Alonso had years out. Raikkonen, sorry, Alonso had years out. They did. Raikkonen, how many years Raikkonen out? He did rallying, didn't he? Like I say. But I don't think Ricciardo's on that level. And also, Alonso left through choice, and Raikkonen left through. Wow. Wasn't he sacked, or didn't Ferrari end his contract? So maybe not through choice, but certainly Alonso was through choice. So Ricciardo's going because he has to. Nobody wants him. I don't know what that is, though. Why Haas or Williams aren't looking at him if they aren't looking at him. Is it his wages, maybe? Or their salary they don't want to pay? Perhaps. Have they got other options? Are they looking a bit more long-term? Williams seems to be with Sargent and Albon, so maybe that's it. But it's sort of a shame because I think a lot of people like Danny Rick, and he is quick. I still think he's quick. I think if you give him the opportunity in the right car, he'll deliver for you. But in a car that suits him, or a car he can get his head around, that McLaren is not a bad car, and he's not performing. I mean, where are we? Let's have a championship. Why not? So he's picked up 29 points to Norris's 101. Best result of P5. He's had 5 points finishes. Norris, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, including a podium in Imola. I mean, he's been absolutely mullered, hasn't he? So I can't... I kind of defend McLaren over their decision to let him go. I don't necessarily agree with the way they went about it. I think it could have been handled much better. But I think the decision to let him go was a fair one because he's not performing for them. And I can understand why other teams aren't jumping at the chance to sign him. If that's close and he's performing and then McLaren say we don't want you and he goes, then Alpine would have been straight in for him. Gazzy would still be at AlphaTauri, I'm sure of that. If he was performing, Alpine would have probably gone for him, whether the CEOs liked it or not. If he's on pace and he's delivering for a team and he becomes available, you're going to go get him. Williams will go get him, or Haas will, but it is a shame in some ways. But it's the performance-based business, results-based business. You're not delivering either, then you're not going to get a seat. So he might be back. He may well be back. We shall see. Lots of ifs and buts. You know, Audi. Next year's our last year with Alfa Romeo Sauber. It's going to be allegedly something to do with Audi, so Audi Sauber or something like that, before they come in proper in 2026. And maybe they'd like a driver like Ricciardo on their books, perhaps. So that's a possibility. You know, that still talk that Andretti are trying to get him. Would they maybe bring in like a Colton Herta, and they might think, actually, do you know what? Danny Rick's popular in America and he's got F1 experience. Let's bring him in. You never know. There's so much is going to change over the next few years. Potentially is going to change that might open some seats up. But at the minute, I don't see a way back for him. Yes, Mario, still waiting for Häkkinen's comeback. Absolutely. It should just be Sauber, Max. I agree. In fact, I might just call them Sauber from now on. Findlay says Andretti is buying AlphaTauri. I heard a rumor about that the other week, actually. I think we discussed it on stream, but we shall see on that one. James says he got screwed this race. Yeah, strategy didn't work for him, did it? In the end, they were too late with the tyres, by all accounts. So in fact, I'll tell you what, actually, let's go and see, because I didn't have much on McLaren. Let's go and be fair and see if we can find what they've said in their press releases. Don't do audio interviews. They've not that I can see, and they link their store for some reason and not their webpage, because they want to sell things, I guess. It's the way to look at that one. I'll have a look at the website, see if there's anything in there under McLaren Racing. There might be. Was that the last race for the Cyberpunk livery as well? I think it was, wasn't it? Which is sort of a shame because I quite like that one. We'll go to the team stream, as they call it. I do like the team stream. Very exciting. So Lando Norris says, I lost a lot of positions in the first start, which was unfortunate, but then made up for it with the pit stop. And Ricciardo says, I don't think our pace was too bad, but it was also just a case of managing the tyres. So not actually a huge amount in there. Yeah, that's Singapore, isn't it? Or is it Japan? Yeah, that's qualifying. So, yeah, so not much in there, but I can't defend his performances. Bad luck or not, he has had bad luck this year with strategy and that, but it's the way it goes sometimes. The McLaren is comfortably worse than the Alpine. Is quite frankly an indictment on Alpine this year that this battle is still a battle for fourth. It's a fair point, Sam, to be honest. It's reliability, isn't it? It's the reliability that screwed them this year. They could have been long gone in fourth place. Don't think they'd be challenging for third. But yeah, Daniel Ricciardo's path back is through Audi. Feel like he's been pushing that way since he found out McLaren were letting him go, says Warren. That's an interesting one. Miss ZZ says Piastri never had a contract to drive for Alpine. He never had that choice or Mercedes or Alpine. He did not. You are right. When was the Piastri? It feels like ages ago, but it wasn't that long ago. Was it really the Piastri situation? So there you go. I think Ricciardo could go to Aston Martin in a few years' time if Alonso retires, says CPB1 in the chat. Isn't Audi not coming in for ages, though? Says they are, and we don't know officially. In fact, actually, officially, I don't think it's been announced yet. They are joining in 2026, but the talk is that with the Alfa Romeo sponsorship deal, if you want to call it that, ending at the end of next season, that Audi will come in if they are buying Sauber or investing into Sauber. They'll come in with as a sponsor, like an Audi Sauber kind of thing, and then in 2026 they'll start building the power unit, or they'll start before 2026, but they'll start using that. Thank you. You sent me the link. Thank you so much for the press release. I can read it, see what Ricciardo's saying now. So Ricciardo overall says, "I'm happy we got to race today. It was looking very unlikely. So as a driver, of course, to have the opportunity to have a bit of fun. I enjoyed that, and more so for the fans, especially sitting out in this weather. The end result was just really a case of when we fit the inters, which was tricky. It's not like a normal situation where it's ready and you just go. There are a few things to consider. I think the cars that went in, like Vettel, certainly capitalised. So that's where we lost out today. Otherwise, I don't think our pace was too bad, but it was also just a case of managing the tyres. We have some things to improve, but ultimately, I'm just glad we made a race for the fans today. And actually, if you look at the timing screen, like I say, a couple of seconds behind his teammate, a couple of seconds off points. Not too bad, was it, in the end? So, yeah. Yeah, more teams is definitely the answer. Admiral Scrub says, if Ricciardo, as much as his plans pains me to say, was more consistent in point scoring like Norris, McLaren will be far more likely to have fourth in the constructors. Bold call. Obviously, we'll never know, but it's an interesting one. It won't be Audi Sauber in 24-25. Sauber will still have the Ferrari engine. I hope it'll be Sauber F1 team for 24-25. I think there might be some sort of sponsorship on there with Audi, if Audi have got another project. That's a good point, actually, yeah, on the manufacturer thing. But then we did, I know it was very different circumstances, but we did used to have BMW, Sauber, Ferrari. So you never know in Formula One. Rumour has it Fernando has taken up a crash course in cameraman duty for F1 races. I hear he was very good once. That says cited canvas. Absolutely. Any more questions before we round up for today? I will say, actually, while I'm just waiting for you guys to pop any questions in, I don't think he'll be listening, but if he does listen later or is listening while he's waiting, best of luck to Dan today, and get well soon, mate. I'm not gonna say any more than that because that's up to him to tell you. But I do just want to say he was supposed to join me for this, but something came up for him this year. So hope it all goes well, mate, and you get well soon. Drop me a message and we'll arrange a chat in the week at some point in the evening. So yeah. Should James Allison could replace David Croft. Should he replace David Croft? I do miss James Allen. I'd argue it depends on why you'd want him to replace David. If you want him to replace David Croft for bias, then James Allen is not the way to go. If you go back to his commentary for Jenson Button back at Hungary, I think everyone was happy for him, but there was a little bit of British bias there, I think. So, why so rainy this season? Yeah, I thought that this morning when I saw the weather in Japan. I thought it feels like we're having this every weekend. I don't know. Scheduling? I mean, Japan's not that much earlier or later in the year than it usually is it? So, I don't know. a good question. I don't know. It's rainy season in Japan. Yeah, I think the general the question is, Kings App, just why it seems to be every weekend or every other weekend we seem to be having these conversations about rain. It feels like it might not be. I don't know, but it certainly feels like it, doesn't it? I think they're more into typhoon season next year, aren't they, with the Japanese Grand Prix? I think they're later, as I recall. I think the 2023 schedule's here somewhere. So next year's Japanese Grand Prix is 24th of September. It's earlier, sorry. It's 24th of September. So couple of weeks. So that could be fun. I don't know what it's like in Japan in September. I need to make a graphic of the calendar so you can have that in stream for next year so you know what's happening. But really, championship's done. We are done for the Drivers' Championship. Constructors, not done just yet. But that feels like a formality unless something crazy happens. I mean, what's the situation? 6-19 plays 4-5-4. That's done, isn't it? Let's be honest. So it's really all about that battle for fourth place between Alpine and McLaren. Whether or not Aston can overhaul Alfa, but also Haas aren't that far for neither Alpha Tauri on 34 points apiece. So that's pretty close. Williams are going to be last, unfortunately, this year again. But that's where all the fights are. And in the Drivers' Championship, you're looking at that battle for second between Perez and Leclerc. Could be fun. Maybe he can get the win. That'd be good, wouldn't it? Get the win in Mexico. And what else have we got going on in this championship? Hamilton, 27 points behind George Russell. So I suppose, and Carlos Sainz sandwiching there on 202. Maybe there's a fight there to be had for P4. I don't know. Lando Norris on 101 looks good for P7 at the moment. I hate that I'm looking through this table now looking for the battles because we know that the championship is done, but fully deserved for Max Verstappen. He's been absolutely dominant this year, and I tell you what, I'll sort of round off on them. First of all, don't forget to drop a like because we are about 150 away from where we want to be for Charles Edward Cheese. I'll read this from Marie. Says, kind of upsetting everyone was confused about the championship victory and we got no iconic audio. Pretty dominant and straightforward championship. Gets a very underwhelming end. Yeah, I said that earlier actually. I feel a bit... Not Max probably won't care, but I mean from a viewer's point of view, we've not got that great commentary over the line, that Max Verstappen champion of the world and all of that. But we didn't even get it when he won the race. It was Crofty was talking about Leclerc, and then I think Verstappen was basically coming into turn one by the time Crofty had said Max Verstappen wins the Japanese Grand Prix. So a lot of confusion at the end. Nobody really knew what was going on initially, but it did sort itself out though. So it's a shame for him. But the thing I was going to put to you then, before we round up today, how can I word this question? We'll go for the total. How many wins do you think Max Verstappen will get now? So he's got, is it 12 for the season? So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So he's got 12 for the season. 4 more races to go. The record for most wins in a season is 13. I think he's got a great shot at breaking that. Do you think, how many races do you think he'll win in total? So he's got 12, 4 races to go. I'm going to say 15. I'm going to go with 15. I'll go with USA, Brazil, and Abu Dhabi, and say that Perez wins Mexico and Red Bull win every race since France. Is what I'm going to go for. Which is quite a run, by the way. Yes, Vettel's record will stand, but Red Bull will beat their own record, which is great. Freeze says 14. Vroom says 14 to 15. Davis says 15. Ankit says 15. Findlay says 17, including a sprint. Of course, a sprint to come, isn't there? Max says 14. Clarkey says 17. 15 for Alex, for Chris. 14 for Mario, and hello, good day, Jeff. 15 for Adam. Just Mango says 3 more. Admiral Scrub says 2 more. Yeah, 15 for Frank Kazooie. As a viewer, this was comedy gold, though. It was quite frustrating. Johnny Herbert. Oh, I think with that penalty, that means things have changed. Max, come back here, Max. You're a world champion. Am I? What? It was quite funny. It'll be something we laugh at in the future, but I can understand why people are like, well, that's ridiculous. This is such a mess. But at least Johnny Herbert goes down in history as the guy that told Max Verstappen he was world champion. And then the guy who tried to get him to go into the reserved for world drivers champions room will forever go down in history as the guy that had to convince Max Verstappen he was world champion. At least there's some funny stories to come out, but I'm sure there'll be lots of dubbing done and re-recording and all that nonsense, and we'll get it in the titles next year. But yeah, let me have a look actually, just for Chris, because Chris keeps asking me about this chair. I'm gonna go have a look for it because I get F1's very cringe at the moment, isn't it? So let's see if I find a picture of it. Oh, for goodness sake! I mean, it looks comfy. To be fair. Wow, I mean his face. The picture I've got here, the face is like, get me off this fucking chair. Yes, Chris, that is ridiculous. You're right. That is so bizarre. Yeah, I'm not sure why they've done it. Other than, well, we're talking about it. There you go. I've just answered that for you. We're talking about it, aren't we? There you go. He does it. Please, somebody. Why can't I go in there and host my podcast? Very odd, very odd. But maybe there's something to be had there that Warren said earlier. They don't want to pay for shipping to the US, so quick give Charles a penalty. I don't know. Did he say lonely? Oh, it really it does. Purple Zebra says it looks like something from the ladies' loo in a big Weatherspoons. Tacky is the word you're looking for. Definitely. What was the carpet like? Was it a Weatherspoons carpet? Yeah. Will this season of DCS end with Evil Toto in a turtleneck again? Maybe, Sam. Maybe. Purple Zebra's tickled me. Sorry. I could see it as well. That's the thing. I'd love to see Perez with Mexico. Absolutely agree. CPB one. I'd love that too. And let's see. Anything else I want to wrap up? We're probably going to call it a day. On that one, I think we're good. Just have a check through my emails, make sure I've not missed anything. I've not had the Red Bull thing through yet, so I was hoping to have that before the end. I'll see if I've put it on Twitter first, rather than sending out the email. They sometimes do, because I'd like to see what Max has had to say officially. Yeah, nothing on that. I'll tell you what, I'll just very quickly, and then I am ending, I promise, for anybody that wants me to disappear because I want to get on with the rest of their day. I just want to see if he said anything. What his official line is on the championship, other than woohoo. Which will be my official line if I won the championship. That's a review, so that's not going to be in there. F1 made mistake with revised points rule, admits Horner. So that's a headline for you. Ferrari won't appeal Leclerc's penalty. That was an hour ago, so there you go. I'm just reading the headlines now. Wrapping it up, Gasly feared for his life in Japanese Grand Prix track incident, which I think his radio and his pit wall moment was quite wow. Verstappen does say it was quite funny. So I'll read you that one then. We'll end on the thing. So during the race, I had no clue what they were going to decide with the points. The main target was to win the race, but once I crossed the line, I was like, okay, that was an amazing race. Good points again, but not world champion yet. When I did my interview after the race, then suddenly my mechanic started to cheer, and I was like, what's going on? And then I realised Checo was second instead of Charles, but I still didn't know if it was full points or half points or whatever, 75%. I don't know how you do it. But then you read through the rules, and the FIA media delegate came to me, and he said that I was the world champion, so then we celebrated, and then people were telling me, no, you're still missing a point. I was like, this is a bit weird, but eventually we had enough points, so then we were world champions again. So yeah, doesn't mind that it was confusing, found it quite funny because at the end of the day it's not going to change the results, and yeah, that's fair enough. I said he wouldn't care, but we shall wrap it. I might wait a minute and see if Red Bull send a press release out. I could check the Red Bull content pool actually and see if it's on there, but I wanted to have a proper quote from Max on the championship before we called it a day, but if not, then we'll do it another day. It's fine. I think Max summed it up beautifully there. He did Warren, didn't he? It's weird, but I don't mind. It's kind of their feeling there. Is that the one? Is that my full story? So Verstappen said, I'm just very happy that we got to race. It was really tough for us to drive. The car was flying. Very special to do it here in front of all the Honda people and Japanese fans. So thankful to everyone who has contributed to the success. The second title is even more beautiful with this season that we have had. Very good point, of course. Home Grand Prix for Honda. Looks like that is sticking. So I'll just read that last line again. Feels like a nice place to end there. The second title is even more beautiful with the season that we have had. It has been utterly dominant from Red Bull this year. I don't think that's an understatement, but we'll wrap it up there. Please do leave a like I say, before we disappear. We're still quite a way off, but fewer people this morning watching, so I kind of get that, and it's just me waffling, so I understand. But we'll try and get to 500 for Charles Edward Cheese after the video's gone up as well. So we've got 130 to go. Every like is going to help us towards that goal for today. So thank you so much for tuning in. It's been good. I don't often do them on my own, but it is nice to just have a bit of Sean and subscribers and chat every now and again. Just us having a bit of a gossip. But I will be back. Possibly something this week. I'm not going to pretend that there will be or there won't be. I don't know yet. We'll see what happens. But there might be something this week. But definitely, of course, preview for the US Grand Prix and Mexico. And, of course, we'll have the race reaction for both of those as well. And then, of course, a week off. And then it's Brazil and Abu Dhabi. And then it's on to what do we do now for the winter? Take a break, breathe, watch some classic races. That's what you do. So, yeah, back soon with some more content. Please do leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well so you don't miss out on anything coming up in the future. You can follow me on social media as well. Thank you to everyone for your super chats as well. And thank you, of course, to Charles Edward Cheese for the contribution and for your support on the channel. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.